think the ERP has done well, but
Singapore is a country.
Getting a car is a social
It's
status.
When it comes to owning a car in Singapore, you shouldn't even consider it. It's not an option.
Impossible to what's wrong with out of your parents' house. I think your question should be what's wrong with Singaporeans.
Good evening and welcome to Talkabout. Today we're going to touch on transportation. Does transportation in Singapore need fixing in any way? With me in the studio, I have four guests. I have Mr. Winston Cheng, I have Miss Sharon Pang, Miss Sharon Ma, Mr. Tony Chow, and Mr.
Gulati.
Gulati.
Yeah.
Okay, Anuj Gulati. I'll leave the guests to introduce themselves, and I hope that they will tell us more about themselves rather than less. Winston?
Hi, I'm 68 and at the moment gracefully retired. I started off as a disc jockey years ago and later went into business and even into projects and things like that.
And that was what I was afraid of. He has opened a nightclub, he's into big business, he was dealing with some of the big MNCs that came into Singapore. Many of them were successful, and he's being, I don't know, maybe he did something wrong in the past, that's why he's being so cautious. We'll move on to Sharon.
Hi, I'm Sharon. I'm currently a consultant with a training and development firm. I deal with quite a lot of core skills training, so things like emotional intelligence, building high performance teams. My background is actually in Masters in Chemical Engineering, so that's the irony there. But I think my interests are quite diverse. So in my previous jobs, I was also involved in non-profit creative arts work. I was coaching quite a few music bands in performance and taking them on the road for performing in campuses. So yeah, that's my background.
As a band person or as a promoter?
I was doing both. I was the front man of one band and I was a manager of another.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. What band?
The band that I was fronting is actually just me and my husband. We're an acoustic band. And the other band is a youth band that plays pop,
Okay.
high pop as well. Yeah, so.
All right. Okay.
Oh, wow.
And we have Tony Chow.
Hi, I'm Tony Chow. I'm an independent media consultant. I've been in the media sector for about 18 years. Primarily in the creative sector, so I produce TV programs. And I graduated with a degree in political science from the local university. I'm very passionate about creating a creative sector in Singapore. So primarily that's pretty much what I have done so far.
Tony was also the president of the Association of Independent Producers, and I think that he had a lot to do with the growth of the production industry in Singapore for some years.
My
And
name
we
is
have a
Anuj.
filmmaker, yes.
Independent filmmaker based in Singapore. Did my film schooling at NYU Tisch School of Arts in Singapore itself, and I've actually been in Singapore for about 10 years. So I would bring, before that I was in India, so I would bring a different approach to the topic that we have at hand today, which is transportation in Singapore, because I come from India where it is at another extreme level. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys think about the transportation here and approaching that.
And perhaps share with us what you get in India as well.
Yes.
Okay, I think we'll start with the most reticent of us all, Winston. He has usually very little to say. Winston, maybe you can kick it off.
Singapore, well, I suppose there are very little traffic jams for the number of cars on the road, so that I think the ERP has done well, but it has cost a lot, more than an arm and a leg to own a car. So as far as the road transport for cars, I'm quite happy with it because I've seen massive jams elsewhere,
That's true.
right?
Yeah, in other countries, what I've experienced is it's almost like the main roads are car parks. They're not actual roads because everybody is just congested. So I think in terms of I think trying to manage the congestion there it is. But I agree with Winston in terms of like the cost to own and to maintain is very high in comparison. You just need to list the price and share it with somebody who's like visiting here, and you know, the eyeballs just fall out because they're so shocked at how expensive it is.
But is that part of the cost we have to pay to get relatively traffic-free roads?
I suppose in some ways, you know, it's either you have the chicken or the egg. You can't have both at one time. Because if you make it cheap, everybody will have 2 cars, 3 cars. You see, like in Jakarta, they have so many cars in one house, you know.
So you're quite willing to accept that the cost of transportation, cost of owning a car is acceptable for what we have?
Yes.
I can't disagree because I think cost itself, somewhat to me, a lot of people who really needs a car may not be able to afford to get
Yes.
one, and then the people who are richer gets the car. So
Yes.
that is that. What is it really? You know, a fair thing to do? I mean, I'm a public transport person because I take the MRT, I take the buses and all that every day. I don't drive. So my observation has been that lately, especially the last couple of years, I think even the tube or the MRT has been getting very crowded. And there's a lot of discomfort, you know. I mean, yeah, I've been to Tokyo, I've been to Hong Kong, and I can see how the rush hours and how packed the train could be. But I think in Singapore, it's becoming a social problem with so crowded, and also I do realize that the somewhat, well, maybe it's getting better, but the efficiency of the system in terms of frequencies, whereas in a very, very huge country like Tokyo, you got, you know, excellent network, and I do see that the efficiency is there even with such a high number of a volume of people. But here, you got the peak hour, but when you look at the actual frequency of the MRT, it's actually quite difficult. I mean, it takes a long while to get on the train, you know, sometime, and I do feel beside crowded. You know, like what you all say, Winston and Sharon, about costs in terms of owning and using. I think Singapore is probably one of the unique country that was most expensive in owning and also very expensive in maintaining or using. Like Australia, you get a car cheap, but it's very expensive to use it because parking, you know, and everything else are expensive. But here it's both. So back to my point, I think it's somewhat actually penalize those who really needs a car.
But wait a minute, the cost of moving around in our taxis, moving around on the MRT and buses is relatively low, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
Compared to countries that have a comparable system of public transportation.
But it's not a very transparent system because there are a lot of hidden charges. By the time you add on, I think it depends where you're coming from.